Good morning to everybody and Shabbat Shalom to those who are here and, of course, our LMC family abroad. Thank you guys for being part and watching, whether you're watching it live or later on this Shabbat. I know everybody's checking out the tags. That's going to be a neat way of getting out all sorts of different information to you guys really quick. We do sign-ups for events. We'll have it posted on that little tag. Just take your phone and it'll come right up. So, you know, Pastor Matt, he's all teched out, so we're all teched out. Just as an addendum, I know Pastor Matt already mentioned it. I just want to say it again that, for all the ladies, we certainly want to see all you ladies come out next week. I'm assuming everybody's gotten a chance to talk with Nancy or Laura or Karen. So we're believing you guys are going to have a good time. We do have a guest coming out from Washington, D.C., as a matter of fact. Sister Ingrid is going to be coming out, be her first time here. She's part of our LMC family abroad. So it'll be neat for her to come. She'll be able to hang out here and with the ladies and chit-chat and have a good time. But guys, like Pastor Matt said, I know a lot of you guys are coming from distances and you just drop the ladies off at the ladies thing. We'll go to the parsonage and we'll have some burgers. We'll grill up some burgers and dogs and we'll wait for you ladies. And we'll go there. We'll have some Bible discussions and solve all the problems of the world like men do. And so this way there's something for the guys. And guys, it's probably going to be hot, so, bring some shorts if you want, something cool to wear. Or if you like Brother Morrow, just wear shorts. You can do that too, I guess. But we look forward to it. So next week's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. So with that, our opening verse for this morning is going to come out of the book of Revelation, chapter 19 and verses 7 through 9. These should be familiar to us. We've talked about this verse in multiple different ways. Excuse me, guys, getting over a cold. Revelation chapter 19, verses 7 through 9 says the following. Let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife prepared herself. And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright. For the fine linen is the righteousness of the set-apart ones. And he said to me, Write, blessed are those who have been called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, These are the true words of Elohim. For a few moments this morning, the title and the topic of the message is called A Renewed Bride. A renewed bride. You guys, I know the prayer here. If you know it at home, please pray with us and pray it nice and loud with me, everybody. Father, give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart that is willing to obey. In the Master's name, amen. Amen. All right, so this is actually part 2. We started last week. We were talking about the adulterous bride. We're going to get into a little bit more of that today, trying to understand this story. This really is or should be a really informative message for a lot of people, for us certainly, but for especially for people that are coming from or just beginning to start their walk in the Master. By walk, I mean are just beginning to understand, oh my goodness, the Torah really does apply. How does it apply? What does it mean to be under the Torah or under the law and not under the law? All those kind of questions, and what do we do with all of that stuff? This is a really important set of messages that answer a lot of those questions. We're going to get into them today as well. What we're talking about actually is the very core of the message. Now, Yah's word is designed in such a way that he tells us multiple messages in multiple ways, and yet they all sort of come together at the end to form the one big story. And with all of the different branches of the story, for instance, we are sons and daughters of Elohim. Well, that's one direction. That's one way to picture our relationship with him. We are also servants and bondslaves of Elohim. That's another way that he tells us the story through an example that we can understand to see what our relationship is with him. and we can go on and on. There's all sorts of different angles from the temple to the sacrifices. They all tell us a story. But the core story, the center of the story, the reason for everything is that it's about a groom and a bride. It's about a wedding. That is the core story of the entire Bible. So what we're learning is the core story. And you're going to see it's going to apply to everything else as well, but the core story. Now, in the opening verse there in Revelation 19, of course, it is the picture of the coming of Messiah. His bride has made herself ready. We're going to get more into that a little bit, probably even more next week. But it says that she's prepared herself. The ending of the book, which is the book of Revelation, is about the bride. That's the core of the story. The whole thing is about the bride. And it says, blessed are those who have prepared themselves, who are called to the wedding supper of the Lamb. These are the true words of Elohim. That sentence, these are the true words of Elohim, is telling us this is it. This is what it's about. You want to make the wedding feast of the Lamb. You do not want to miss that. That's the core of everything. Who doesn't want to miss the wedding feast of the Lamb? You shouldn't. You should absolutely want to be there. But you should also understand what it takes to be there. Because if it says, blessed are those who are called to the wedding feast of the Lamb, the assumption then is there's lots of people who are what? Not called to the wedding feast of the Lamb, are not going to make it to the wedding feast of the Lamb, are not going to be part of what we will oftentimes refer to as the first resurrection. So this is really, really important stuff. So we've been talking about the renewed marriage covenant and the fact that this story is about a bride. Number 3 on your notes there. I want to show you a couple of verses because so often the concept of bride, when we hear it today, we hear it from a Gentile church perspective. And we've probably all heard this growing up or in our faith when we first started off, that the church is the bride of Messiah. And that's correct, but it's not correct at the same time. I know it's kind of a weird thing. How can two things be true at the same time? Well, if you know anything about Hebrew thought, that's how things always are. Two opposing thoughts can always be true at the same time. And I'll explain myself in a second. But so that you see that this is about a bride. Here's Jeremiah chapter 2 and verse 2. Listen to the words of Yah speaking through Jeremiah to his bride. Go, and you shall cry in the hearing of Jerusalem, saying, thus says Yah, I remember you, the loving commitment of your youth, the love of your bridehood, when you went after me in the wilderness, in a land that was not sown. Israel was set apart to Yah. I put in there in parentheses, set apart to Messiah. In the wilderness, Israel was betrothed to Messiah. Now, I know a lot of times what we wind up hearing or we've grown up with in sort of the modern religious world is that it was Father at Mount Sinai who was married to the house of Israel. No, that's not true. That's not true. This is not a story about a bride for the father. This is a story about a bride for the son. The son is the one who spoke from Mount Sinai. The son is the one whose voice we hear thundering down. The son is the one who sits and eats with Moses and the 70 and is just all aglow. That's the son who we see. And here, Jeremiah is going over that, and he's saying, Yah is saying, I remember you in the wilderness, in the love of your bridehood, our bridehood to him. Israel was set apart. That word set apart is going to become important in a second. It's important always. We can say the word holy is another way of saying it. Set apart is another way of saying it. Called out, separated. Those are all equivalents of each other. But Israel was set apart to Messiah, the first fruits of his increase. All who ate of it became guilty. Evil came upon them, declares Yah. So it starts off really good. I remember when you loved me as a bride at Mount Sinai, and then all of a sudden it goes south. He says, yeah, but you guys turned evil. Yeah, but you guys broke the wedding covenant. And well, of course, we've gone over this story last week. They did. And we've been talking about this for weeks and weeks and weeks. They absolutely did. And so I don't want to go over all of that except to say Israel, both the northern house and the southern house, all eventually committed adultery. And adultery, while we use that human term adultery, we think about a human marriage, it is the equivalent of idolatry. Idolatry is adultery. Adultery is idolatry. Both of them are punishable by what? Death. Death. Now I know in our culture today that's a crazy thought, and nobody's going out there killing anybody for doing it, but we see items or instances in the scripture where we went last week about the woman taken in adultery. What they want to do with her? Kill her, and they're testing Messiah about it. However, despite all of that, despite the fact that his bride, Israel, has become a harlot, Jeremiah 31 verse 31 says, "See, the days are coming, declares Messiah," the husband. That's me, that's the PDP, that's not the text, that's me adding it. Because who is the one who made covenant with her at Mount Sinai? The husband did. Messiah. Now they didn't call him Messiah at that point. We call him Messiah because he's now come. But he was the one who made covenant with them. So it says, "See, the days are coming, declares Yah, when I," again PDP, Messiah, "shall make a renewed," I put in there, "marriage covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah." So before we go any further, we're talking about the new covenant here. That's what it means, renewed new covenant. Who is the new covenant made with? The house of Judah and the house of Israel. And then right after that, there's a period. That's who the new covenant is made. I know sometimes we get people watch like the little shorts that we put out, the little clips, and they hear a phrase like that without the rest of the context of what I'm about to tell you, and then we get all sorts of trolls and all just start ripping us apart, and you're heretics and you're Satan's this, and because you can't learn the gospel in 2 minutes in a short. You just can't. You got to take the time to go and listen to the message to get the stuff that comes before and the stuff that comes after. Having said that, it says, "Not like the covenant that I, Messiah the husband, made with their fathers in the day when I, Messiah the husband, made covenant of marriage, which they broke. Though I was a husband to them, declares Yah." So Jeremiah 2 tells us he remembers the day under Mount Sinai when they became his betrothed, and obviously they fell away. Jeremiah says, yeah, I know they fell away, but I'm going to renew the covenant with the people that I met under the mountain, their descendants, Judah and Ephraim, and I'm going to renew the covenant. Who's going to renew it? The person that spoke from Mount Sinai is going to renew it. Here's Matthew chapter 26 and verse 26. "And as they were eating, Yeshua, the husband, took bread, and having blessed, broke and gave it to the taught ones and said, 'Take, eat, this is the husband's body.' And taking the cup and giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, 'Drink from it, all of you, for this is the husband's blood, that of the renewed covenant promised in Jeremiah 31 and reiterated in Hebrews 8, which is shed for many.'" No, I put in the PDP there. What does he mean by many? Who is the renewed covenant for? Judah and Joseph, or Ephraim, Israel. There's a whole bunch of different names we can use for them. For the forgiveness of sins. So I just show these. I know you guys may know these verses, but I show these to show you a continuity of thought. Who's the husband? The voice of Mount Sinai. Who's the bride? The people at the bottom of Mount Sinai. Who committed adultery? The people at the bottom of Mount Sinai. Who has now who was promised a renewing of that marriage covenant that they messed up? The people at Mount Sinai. Who comes to actually do that? Messiah does. He does. He is the husband. He's the husband who came. We'll talk about more of that in just a couple of minutes. All right, so here's another statement that if we just take it by itself, I'm going to get all sorts of trolls online, but I'm going to say it anyway. Israel is the bride. Not the, and I put it in quotes there, right? You know, when you do quotes, you talk to people and they go, yeah, that means, that's not really the definition of the word, but I'm doing the air quotes. So I'm doing air quotes. Israel is the bride, not the church. One more time, in case, they don't get that part of the short. I'm going to say it again. Israel is the bride, not the church. Now, hopefully, this will also get in the short. What do we mean by church? This is important because we use that word today, but the way we use it today is not the way it is used in the Bible. It's not the definition that's given to us in the book. You guys, we all lived through it. We all saw it. Just 4 years ago, for the 4 years prior, we took a definition that has been the definition of all of humanity for the entire time that any human being's foot has been on this planet, to call a person with XY chromosomes and all the stuff that goes along with XY chromosomes a man. And XX chromosomes and all that goes along with that, a female, a woman. That has been the definition forever. And what we do, like 4 years ago, we changed it. We just changed it. Can you just all of a sudden change definitions? No, you just can't come up with new, and that's what we also did here in the church. We changed this definition as to what it means. Because we think about it, at least today, the majority of people think about it, and they say the church is the Gentile organization, the Gentile bride of Messiah that's been called out from amongst all the nations. And there is truth in that. It's just not the whole truth. The name church has been usurped. I get people that ask me all the time, why do you guys call yourself LMC, Living Manna Church? Why don't you do something else so people don't identify you with a church? No, that's my name. I'm not giving up my name. I'm a man, and I'm always going to be a man. I'm a male. I don't care what you call me. I don't care what law changes. I don't care what Congress says. I don't care what the squad says. I don't care. I'm a man, and I'm not giving up that title. I'm just not. Just because you tell me to, I'm not. Nor am I giving up the term church, because I want to hold to its original definition. What's its original definition? In the Greek, it's the word ekklesia. Ekklesia. And here's what it means. Congregation. Called out. Separated ones. Wait. Remember this? Jeremiah 2. Go and cry in the hearing of Jerusalem and say, thus I remember you in the loving commitment of your youth, the love of your bridehood when you went after me in the wilderness. In a land that was not sown, Israel was called out, separated. That's what the word ekklesia means. The Hebrew equivalent of it, or really the Greek is the equivalent of the Hebrew meaning. The Hebrew word is kahal. And kahal means congregation. It means assembly. It means church. Here's the King James Version. I picked this one in particular because it translates the word this way. Acts chapter 7 and verse 37. Listen to what it's describing. It says, this is that Moses which said unto the children of Israel, where? At Mount Sinai, underneath the mountain. A prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me. Him shall you hear. Verse 38. This is he that was in the church in the wilderness with the angel which spake to him in Mount Sinai with our fathers. Wait. What were they under the mountain called? Church. They were the assembly, the called out ones, the congregation. Now, are you telling me that back there in Mount Sinai, underneath that cloud, there was a building there with a steeple on it and a cross on top of it? No. Was there a congregation there, an assembly, a called out ones, a church, an ecclesia? Yes, there was. It was called the nation of Israel. She became the bride. So the word church does not mean a solely Gentile bride of Messiah brought in by the new covenant. Neither does, however, the word bride mean not a Jewish bride of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. So it doesn't mean that it's just the Jews that are part of the bride, nor does it mean just the Gentiles are part. Both of those would be incorrect. It's not either one of those. And yet that's kind of how we've split it up. Here is who the bride and the church actually is. It is the congregation of believing Israel, believing Judah and Joseph, Ephraim, and all the believing or grafted in former Gentiles, now part of the wedding covenant, the bride. So the bride always consisted of who? Everybody. It consisted of the native born, the people that were direct descendants of the 12 sons, and of everybody else who came. All the Gentiles, except they weren't called Gentiles anymore. They were referred to as strangers and foreigners. But they were all considered the house of Israel altogether. That is the bride. So we get all upset because I said, well, the Gentile church is not the church. Yeah, I get why you would be upset about that, but that's not the definition. It is made up of all of us. Believing Judah, believing Jew, believing Ephraim, and believing Gentile. So with that, hopefully, out of the way for a second, how does this thing, this harlot, this adulteress, how is she to be brought back? What's the mechanism? Because that's what we talked about last week. What's the mechanism? Because we tell people in sort of the modern religious world around us, believe, confess with your mouth, and you'll be saved. He died for your sins. And that's all true. But that leaves something out, because how does that action actually do something for me? What's the mechanism? What's the proof? Where can I look at something that says, this is how this works? This is why he did that. Well, here is number 5 on your notes. The harlot, the adulteress. The Torah tells us Messiah, the husband, suffered the punishment of his adulterous bride. This is last week. This is the whole theme of last week's message. The Torah tells us that he would forgive her sin. The Torah tells us that he would renew, he would strengthen and make better the wedding covenant that they broke. The Torah also tells us that the bride became a harlot, but she will again become a virgin bride. I know that sounds weird. How can you be a harlot and then become a virgin? Well, that's part of the message. And how did he do this? The master drank the bitter cup. Numbers 5, the test of innocence or guilt. Remember last week, she takes the bitter cup. All of the handwriting of the ordinance that are against her are taken and put into the cup. She drinks the cup. This is Numbers 5. If your wife has committed adultery, if she's a harlot, she goes through this. If she's innocent, nothing happens. If she's not, bad stuff happens. Death is coming. So Messiah takes on that judgment against the adulterous bride. His adulterous bride, he suffers what she, by the letter of the law, should suffer. He drinks the bitter cup, and he dies from it as though he was guilty. Because if you drink the cup and your belly swells and all the rest of the horrible things, you're guilty. But he didn't stay dead. Why? Because he wasn't guilty. She was, but he wasn't. With that in mind, And doing that, he is fulfilling or satisfying the letter of the law for his bride. Matthew chapter 2, verse 2, the reign of the heavens is like a king, a sovereign, who made a wedding feast for his son. So if Messiah on the cross, you can see on the picture there, this is how he redeems his bride. See, we teach that as, and it's not inaccurate, we say, well, that he died for our sins. He did. But the core message is he's doing that for his bride. He's taking the place of his bride in doing that. She should be the one who is there. Not him, but he willingly does that. And in doing that, he satisfies the letter of the law. Because the letter of the law says if you commit adultery and it's been proven that you are guilty of adultery, what's the punishment for adultery? Death. What's the punishment for murder? Death. And the punishment for a whole lot of things in the Torah wind up to be death. And people read that and they say, oh, what a horrible, terrible God, how brutal. And we are all under the Torah, whether we know it or not. Whether we know it or not, the judgments that are given, the letter of the law, every single one of us are under. We can live our whole lives and not pay attention to it at all. But on the day you die and you don't make the first resurrection and you make the second resurrection, guess what you'll be judged by? The letter of the law. It doesn't matter if you were Buddhist, doesn't matter if you were Islam, doesn't matter if you were agnostic, doesn't matter if you were atheist, doesn't matter if you were American, doesn't matter if you were Afghani, doesn't matter if you're Japanese. It doesn't matter. This is the Creator's guide and instruction for the marriage, and we've all broken it, all of us. And the letter of the law demands death. So it's coming one way or the other. So the letter of the law really is harsh. So my question is, okay, he comes, now we know, because of last week's message, he does this in the place of his bride. But I still got the question of why. Because we're told, okay, he came as a substitutionary death, and he died for his bride, but why? Why is that a thing? How can he come and die for his bride? What is that just New Testament? Is that just come up? Is that just something we thought of? Or is this in the Torah? Well, like everything else, guys, it's in the Torah. So why and how? Number 6 on your notes. We normally, and we've heard this before, that the gospel message is about the Passover. Messiah is the Passover. Behold the Lamb of Elohim, right? Who takes away the sin of the world. Except he does take away the sin of the world, and he is the Lamb of Elohim. But technically, is Passover a sin offering? No, it's not. It's the offering that covers the firstborn from death. At least that's the way it's revealed to us in the Torah. I'm not saying Messiah's sacrifice doesn't save us. I'm just saying technically that may be true, but the technical Passover is not a sin offering. Well, then he's just a lamb who's a sin offering like all of the rest of the Torah tells us about, that you come and you bring your sin offering. And those may be types of him, and those may be parts of the story. But the sin offering that the Torah speaks about is something that has to be done over and over and over and over again. Is he the red heifer? Well, technically, yes, and the red heifer does deal with sin as well. But the main point of the red heifer is to be able to anoint the temple, is to cleanse whatever the ashes of the red heifer touch, including us. If we've touched death ourselves, it can clean us, or it can clean the people of that actually had the red heifer's ashes. So is Messiah that? Yeah, he's all of these things. And all of these things tell us a piece of the story. But the core of the story is that he's a husband, and he's come for his bride. So each of these tell us a different aspect of that, but the core story is a husband that comes for his bride. So a couple of things. I want you to follow along with me here. Sin, which is the breaking of the law. That's 1 John 3:4. Sin is the transgression of the law. Let's say it this way. Sin is the breaking of the law of the marriage covenant. That's technically what it is. Because we say, well, I'm a sinner. Okay, I'm a sinner. I was a gambler. I was a drunk. I was a drug addict. I was this. I was that. I did all these things. Yes, you did those things, and those are sin. But what is sin ultimately? The breaking of the marriage covenant. The law of the marriage covenant. So how can we be forgiven for breaking the law of the marriage covenant? Forgiving of sin, or the breaking of the marriage covenant, can only happen if there is a letter of the law satisfied. It can only be done according to the Torah. Wait a minute, you're telling me that we can only be made right before Yah in the Torah or by the instruction of the Torah? Yes. Oh, wait a minute. So then what does it mean when it says we're not under the Torah? Because that's what people say. Oh, no, that's heresy. I can't believe that. The Torah has nothing to do with us anymore. We're not under the Torah. The Torah's got nothing to do with the cross of Messiah. The Torah has everything to do with the cross of Messiah. They say we are not under the curse. We're not under the letter of the Torah. Because the letter says death is the result of adultery. So let's read something. Here's Galatians chapter 3 and verse 10. Pay attention to the PDP. That's the yellow that's up there. Hopefully you guys can see it. Hopefully this will make sense to everybody. This is Saul. We're going to read a lot of Saul today. Paul. He says, for as many as are of the works of the Torah. Now I put the PDP in there so you get, I hope, a clearer picture of what he's actually saying. So more modern English here. Let's say it this way. For as many as are of or rely upon the works of the Torah, PDP, to be declared right or righteous are under a curse. That's not just now. That has been the way it's always been. If, in fact, we only rely upon the Torah to be declared right before Yah, then we're under a curse. Why? For it has been written, where? In the Torah and the prophets, cursed is everyone who does not continue in all that is written in the book of the Torah to do them. If you're counting on this to be our righteousness, you're going to be disappointed in yourself because you're going to mess up. And the letter of the law says when you mess up, there is a penalty to pay. And what if you commit adultery? Death is the penalty. Verse 11. And that no one is declared right by the Torah before Elohim is clear, for it is written in the Torah and the prophets that the righteous shall live by faith. Or belief. Belief in what? The husband, Elohim. That's how the righteous live. So do the righteous live and get righteousness by Torah, or do they gain righteousness by faith? It's always been this way. That's what he's telling us here. Let's read on just a little bit. I lost my spot there. And that no one is declared right by the Torah is clear. The righteous shall live by faith, faith in the husband. And the Torah is not of belief in the husband. It is the instruction for the believer or the bride who already believes. Can I say that again? Everybody catch what I just said? This is important. I know it sounds like I'm splitting hairs here. I'm not. These are really important definitions and understandings. The Torah is not a faith. The Torah doesn't produce faith. You either have faith in who he is and believe, or you don't. The Torah is not a faith. It is the instruction to the believer or the bride who already believes. But the man who does the Torah, the bridal instruction, the man who does them because he believes shall live by them. So if you believe, what are you going to do? You're going to obey the instruction. But we messed up a lot, to the point that Israel, the bride, became an adulterous bride. So, verse 13, Messiah, the husband, redeemed, purchased a bridal dowry. We don't do that today in our culture, really, but lots of other cultures still do this. The husband has to pay something. The husband, the be, has to pay something to get the bride to be his. There's a monetary value or some sort of value on her. We don't do this, but this is the context here. The husband, Messiah, has redeemed or purchased the dowry of the bride. He has redeemed us from the curse of the Torah. Wait a second. That's not the same thing as being removed from the Torah. We're being removed from the curse of the Torah. What's the curse of the Torah? Commit adultery and you die. Commit murder and you die. There is a repercussion, a payment for everything that gets done. He redeemed us from the curse of the Torah, having become a curse for us. Again, my question is, how? He keeps telling us that, okay, this happened, but how did this happen? What's the mechanism here? I still don't understand that. I do. I'm just being rhetorical here. I still don't understand that. I get it. You can say, well, I just believe he forgave me, therefore I'm forgiven. Okay, good. I think that's the first step. But at some point, if you're like me, do you ever have your kids in the backseat of the car, especially when they're like 6, 7, 8, and they're sitting in the backseat of the car and you're on a long drive? You know what they do? Question after question after question after, why, Daddy? Why? Why? And you tell them the answer, and why? And then you tell them the answer, and why? And after a while, I say, because I said so, that's why, right? Because you get to that point. I want to know why. And maybe you get upset at me, but I want to know why. How does this actually happen? There's got to be an explanation here, and there is. For it has been written, where? In the Torah, cursed is everyone who hangs upon a tree. Number 7 on your notes. I'm going to ask you a question. You guys can answer it, or it's just really a rhetorical question. Can or does Yah just forgive? Just forgive sin? Can he and does he just forgive sin? If we commit adultery, can he just forgive us? Can he just say, okay, I know you blew it. I know you made a mistake. It's all right. Don't worry about it. I forgive you. Now, we do that to each other all the time in our day-to-day life. Somebody does something silly against you. They come and they ask for forgiveness. I mean, you're not expecting them to bring a lamb, right, and slaughter it in front of you and say, oh, this is how I feel about the whole thing. That's not what we do. So somebody says, hey, listen, I really messed up. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have, texted about you or whatever. I apologize. If they do, what do we respond with? I forgive you. All right. Or at least I hope you do. You should. I forgive you. Does Father do that? More importantly, I know it sounds weird. Can Father do that? Here's the answer. I know it's on your notes, so you know already. No. No. Say, wait a minute. Father forgives all the time. Yes, but it's because of something that Father forgives. This is not Father's character to just forgive, nor is it the Son's character just to forgive. They are echad. They are in unison. Our God, and we've talked about this before, is a God of equal weights and measures. We've talked about this, right? You're supposed to equal weights and measures. And here's sort of our more modern way of saying this in sort of a scientific way. For every action, I think it's the first or second law of thermodynamics. For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. Whatever you do is going to come back to you. The Hindus call it karma. Everything has an opposite and equal reaction to it. This is what equal weights and measures means. So if something is lacking, the same amount that is lacking must be paid for to balance the scale back out. Because if it's unbalanced, then it's not equal weights and measures. Our Yah is a God of balance. He is a God of order. All things are in order. Everything must be balanced. This is the whole idea. Even today, in law today, you look at the picture of go in front of a courthouse, and there's a picture of Liberty, Lady Liberty, and she's blind, and she's holding what in her hands? A scale of justice. And if somebody's done something to you, the scale is unbalanced. And so you go to court and you seek some sort of remedy for it so that whatever the remedy is, it's supposed to, doesn't always because we're human, but the idea is that it's supposed to do what to the scale that's been unbalanced? Balance it back out. Equal weights and measures. Our Yah is a Yah of equal weights and measures. And he is a righteous Yah, which means if he's righteous and there is that which is unrighteous, there must be an equal weight and measure to counter it. And of course, he does not change. So with that, the Torah and the prophets, they teach us of the letter of the law, the curse. And the curse, of course, is death. So here's an action. If the action is sin, which is breaking the wedding covenant, what's the opposite and equal reaction according to the letter of the law? Death. What does that do then? If adultery unbalances it, what according to the Torah can balance it? Death. There must be a payment. For every action, there is an opposite and so if that's the opposite and equal reaction, how big is adultery? I know we don't think about it in our culture, which I think is an absolute rejection of Father's word. We think of marriage as no big deal. You can just go from partner to partner to partner. We don't realize, oh my goodness, that can unbalance the scales in such a way. And oh man, there's a price to pay for this at the end of this thing. So, the opposite and equal reaction to that in the letter of the law would be death. But not only is our Yah a righteous Yah, and he does not change, not only is he a Yah of equal weights and measures, he is also a compassionate and loving El. There is no difference between the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament. There is no difference. It is the same Yah of the Old Testament as in the New Testament. He is a compassionate and loving El. Wait a minute, how can that be true? Because you read the Old Testament, that people are dying and wars and people are getting killed. In the New Testament, he's like about love and love God and love everybody else. If I love, that's all I need. Well, that's not the same God. Oh, yes, it is. Two things in Hebrew thinking can be true at the same time. He can be both. And he is. And he does not change. So, not only in the Torah and the prophets is the letter of the law that brings curse, but in the Torah and the prophets is also the spirit of the law. Now, when I say spirit of the law, when Saul uses the term spirit of the law, let me put a modern English phrase on it. The intent of the law. The curse of the law is what you do what happens when you break it. But the intent of the law is the spirit of the law. Here's an example. I know it's exaggerated, it sounds silly, but it'll make the point. There is a law all around us called gravity. What is the intent of the law? Well, the intent of that law is to make sure as you're walking down the street, you just don't all of a sudden fly off one day and start heading out to the stratosphere and die of asphyxiation and get up into the troposphere and freeze to death and be cast out into space. And before we know it, you're sitting on the moon and people are looking at you with telescopes. That's the intent of the law, to keep you safe. What's the curse of that law? Well, if I run at the end of a 5-story building and I jump off of that 5-story building, no matter what the intent of the law is, what's coming my way? The curse of the law. Both are true at the same time. So you keep jumping off of buildings, so I probably can only do it once, but you keep doing that rhetorically, what are you going to keep knocking yourself into? Well, first, if you're doing that, there's something wrong with your flesh. Second, you're going to be judged by the letter of the law. But there has always been the spirit of the law right there the whole time. It's always been there. The intent so that you don't fly off the planet. With that said, in the Torah, there is the letter of the law. But there is also the intent or the spirit of the law. And the spirit or the intent of the law, because our God is a compassionate El, is blessing and life and mercy and grace. So he can be a God of blessing, life, mercy, and grace, and he can be a God of judgment and wrath and fierce anger. And both of those are true at the same time. Everybody with me? Please, if you're not, I don't know what to tell you. No, if you're not, we'll talk about it. I'll keep going over it. But this is important. This is really, really important. So, for the spirit of the law, an action occurs. Sin, which is the breaking of the wedding covenant. There must, because he is a Yah of equal weights and measures, there must be an equal and opposite reaction. What's the equal and opposite reaction? Well, you can say substitutionary death. Yes, because substitutionary death still pays the letter of the law, death. And it allows the grace and mercy and compassion to now be applied. So the letter satisfied, and now that individual can understand the intent of it, not having suffered the letter of it. Here is so the grace and mercy. So the substitutional death satisfies the letter, and the spirit of the law satisfies the intent of the law. But it's bigger than just the concept of sacrifice. It's bigger than just the concept, and that it's not that that's not true, but it's bigger than that. It's not just about animal sacrifice. It's not just about blood. It's bigger than that. Here is Romans chapter 7. Listen carefully. What then shall we say? Is the Torah sin? Now I put the PDP in there, again, to make it a little bit more clearly understood. Is the Torah sin? Is the Torah meant to bring death? Ask yourself that question for a second. Do you think that Yah gave us the Torah to bring death to us? No. No, that's not the intent of the Torah. That's the curse of the Torah. If you break the Torah, if you cause that action, there will be an If you eat of the fruit of this tree, what's going to happen? You're going to die. Action, reaction. Did Yah want them to die? No. So he put the whole information out there for them. And we made choice. So is the Torah sin? Is it meant to bring death? Saul says, let it not be. Verse 14, same chapter, he says, for we know that the Torah is spiritual, meaning the intent of it is meant for what? Life or death. It's meant for life. But you choose. It's life or death based on your choices. But it's meant for life. But Saul says, but I am fleshly. I'm sold under sin. Which means every time I keep jumping off this building, what happens? Splat. And for some reason, I just keep doing it. Over and over and over and over. Woe is me. I got a problem, a law on the inside of me that's an issue. Here's 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6. Who also made us competent servants. Now I took out the word servants, I put the word bride in there, because we can be talked about in so many different directions. Who also made us competent servants, a bride of a renewed wedding covenant, not of the letter. That's what it means to not be under the law, but of the Spirit, the intent of the law. For the letter, the curse kills, but the Spirit, the intent, gives life. So when you begin to wrap your mind around this, and we hear things like, okay, we're not under the law, so people think that means that everything that's been written beforehand has nothing to do with us. That's not true. Everything that was written before us that brings a curse to us, you're not bound and under that anymore. You are now, should be, I hope, living to the intent of the Torah, because that's still Torah. No matter how you cut it, that's still Torah. It's still there. Two things are there that are opposite, but they're true at the same time. The intent of Abba is to bring a bride for his son. Here is number 8 on your notes. Again, I said this before, Messiah is the husband, not the father. Here's John chapter 3 and verse 28. You yourselves are witnesses for me that I said, I am not. So this is John the Baptist, obviously his testimony. He says, I am not the Messiah, but I am sent ahead of him. He, the Messiah, the one who spoke from Sinai, that has the bride who is now adulterous, Judah and Joseph. The one who has her is the bridegroom. But a friend of the bridegroom, which is John, who stands and hears him, rejoices greatly because of the voice of the bridegroom. What's the voice of the bridegroom? The voice of the bridegroom teaches us the intent of the Torah. Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah. I have not come to destroy the Torah, but to fulfill it, to pay its letter and help you understand its spirit, its intent. And if our righteousness isn't better than the Pharisees and the scribes, we're in trouble. That's a whole other message. We're going to get there. We're going to start talking about the calendar real soon. That's all tied up in the calendar, believe it or not, as is this right here with John the Baptist. But I got something to tell you about that after today, after this morning. So he says, by hearing the voice of the bridegroom, so this joy of mine is complete. So I read all of this to say that John knew that Messiah was who? The bridegroom. He knew he was, and he knew who the bride was. Here's Luke chapter 5, verse 34. And he said to them, are you able to make the friends? So John's disciples, this is important. John doesn't do this, and there's a reason why John wouldn't do this, but some of his disciples did this. They were fasting just like the Pharisees were fasting. And they asked the master, how come we fast and your disciples don't? Remember, John didn't do that. His disciples did. They're copying the Pharisees. And of course, this is Messiah's response to them. And he said to them, are you able to make the friends of the bridegroom, meaning the apostles there, fast while the husband, the Messiah, the bridegroom is with them? But the day shall come when the bridegroom, the Messiah, is taken away from them, and they shall fast in those days. So is there any ambiguity as to who's the husband? None whatsoever. He clearly defines it. The Messiah is the husband. The Messiah, the one betrothed to Israel at Sinai, the one who gave the wedding covenant, the Torah, his bride that committed adultery and got scattered, Ephraim, including Ephraim and Joseph, who were grafted in, and Judah, their leadership, rejected him because they were all an adulterous bride. But they were, even though they were his bride, he still came to die for her. Again, I'm sitting in the back seat. It's a long drive. I'm 7 years old. And what am I saying besides the fact, are we there yet? Why? Why? Well, because, why that? Well, why that? I'm still asking why. I still haven't gotten an answer to that. I got a lot, we're in the ballpark, but there's really no answer yet. There's stuff we believe. Yeah, he died for our sins. Okay, great. Why? Why? Next on your notes, number 9. We're all familiar with this. We should be. We've heard this probably preached a gazillion times over the years. This is all about marriage and the wedding. And of course, our culture gets all ticked off and bent out of shape. This is the patriarchy, and it's the whole, new whatever it's called. I forgot what the cultural revolution is that's going on now, that there's no definitions for things, and we don't have to have marriage, and we don't have to have kids, and we can go get a job and not really even bring up a next, all that crazy. Changing definitions again. Postmodernism, that's what I was looking for. Postmodernism. Except the instruction is this. Ephesians 5:21. Subjecting yourselves to each other in the fear of Elohim. Wives, subject yourselves to your own husbands as to the master. Again, people get all ticked off hearing that, but listen to what it says. Because the husband is the head of the wife, as also Messiah, the head of the assembly, the congregation, the church, the bride, Israel, and he is the Savior of the body. But as the assembly is subject to Messiah, so also let wives be to their own husbands in every respect. What does that mean? Let's think of it. So how are you subject to Messiah? You live in such a way that you honor him in what you say and what you do. And you do what you do because you love him. That's how we honor Messiah. All he's saying is, in your marriage, it's got to be the same way, but it's a reciprocal thing. Why do we love Messiah? Because he loved us first, and he showed that love. Here's the next verses. Verse 24, but the assembly is subject to Messiah. Let wives be to their own husbands in every respect. Husbands, love your wives, as Messiah also did the assembly and gave himself for it. So husbands, it's not like your wife's just supposed to love you if you're a jerk. You gotta love her like Messiah loved the assembly. So there's a lot more to this, and this isn't a marriage thing. I didn't want to get into all of this, but this isn't a marriage teaching, but it is in one sense a marriage teaching, that this is a two-way reciprocal thing. And it's tough when, because we're all coming from different backgrounds, when it's not reciprocal, when one is a Messiah and one isn't a Messiah. Those just create all sorts of other questions for which there are answers in the Torah. I'm not going to go over them today. Sorry, another time, we will. However, verse 26, see how he gave himself for the assembly in order to, according to Jeremiah 2, the bride, set it apart. Make it a church. Make it a called out ones. How? Again, my question. How is he going to do that? And he's to cleanse it, that is the bride, with the washing of the water by the word, that is the Torah and the intent of the Torah, in order to present to himself a splendid assembly, not having spot or wrinkle or of any sort, but that it might be set apart and blameless, like we read in Revelation 19. Blessed are those who are called to the wedding feast of the Lamb. The bride has made herself ready. In this way, husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Again, I gotta ask, how? Why? How is this possible? You know what the answer, the silly, simple answer is? Because the Torah says so. Because Yah said so through the Torah already. Yeah, but the Torah is the letter. No. The Torah is the letter that leads to the curse, but there's also the intent of the Torah, the spirit that leads to life. Jeremiah chapter 3. Let's answer the question, how or why? because there is an answer, and of course the answer is the Torah, or in the Torah. Here's Jeremiah chapter 3. He's going to go over the problem that's going on with the wife. And it says, Elohim said. So this is important. If Jeremiah is telling us this is what Elohim has said, who's the one speaking? Messiah. Well, we don't know him as Messiah at this particular point, but if this is the husband who's speaking, who's the husband? Messiah is. Listen to what Messiah says, or Elohim says. If a man puts away his wife, and she goes from him and becomes another man's, does he return to her again? Simple answer, no. No. Would not that land be made greatly unclean if he does that? But you, meaning the people, have committed whoring with many lovers. So he's given us the instruction to real people with real marriages that's going on in Israel. And he's saying, this is the law, this is what it says, this is the letter. And now I'm telling you guys committed adultery all over the place. And I'm the husband, and you're the bride. Does the master still live within the bounds of the Torah? Yes. Do not think that I have come to remove the Torah. I have not come. I have come to fulfill the Torah. There's nothing the master did that broke Torah, ever. So it goes on to say, would not that land be made greatly unclean? The land meaning the land of Israel, the temple, Jerusalem. But you have committed whoring with many lovers. And would you return to me, declares Yah? Lift up your eyes to the bare heights and see. And now he's going to ask a question. It's actually really, it's kind of a rude question, but I get it. Where have you not lain with other men? So put this in context. Can a woman who goes out and sleeps with others then decides she's going to come back to her husband? No, it's going to poison the land. And then he says, yeah, you're all whores. You've all committed adultery. You don't want to know where? Just look. Just look. Any mountaintop you see, any grove you see, any gods you see, just pick. Just take it, throw it out there. You're going to hit it. That's what you did. It's kind of harsh. And yet, that's what he says. But you've committed whoring with many lovers. And would you return to me, declares Yah? I mean, this isn't sounding very good. Lift up your eyes to the bare heights and see where have you not laid with men? Besides the ways you have sat for them like an Arabian in the wilderness. I think he's talking about an Arabian horse, but that's another thing. And you made the land, your husband's house, Jerusalem, unclean with your whorings and your evil. So you read that and you would think, oh, so it is that he's got to get rid of Israel and Judah because he can't take them back. That's what it just said, didn't it? He can't take them back if they've broken the covenant to the point that he's got to kick them out because it makes the land unclean. So people say, well, you see, it's all about a Gentile bride because there is no more Israel. No. You got to read everything all together. He's quoting or making a reference to Deuteronomy chapter 24. Here's where it was written in the Torah. Listen carefully. When a man takes a wife and shall marry her, then it shall be, if she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found a matter of uncoveredness, which means adultery, in her, and he shall write her a certificate of divorce, a get is what it's called, and put it in her hand and send her out of his house. Wait a second. Did Yah do that? Oh, yes, he did. Yes, he did. He did it to the northern house because they wouldn't stop worshiping Baal and Molech, and the list goes on and on and on and on of all the things. So finally, he just allowed Assyria to take them over. He kicked them out of his house. The husband kicked them out of his house and she went to go live with her lovers. Did it to Judah too. Judah went to Babylon, kicked them out of the house, and they went to go live with their lovers. He did it with Rome too. Kicked them out. So let's read on. He should give a certificate of divorce, put her in her hand, and send her out of his house. And if she left his house, that is the land of Israel, Jerusalem, and went and became another man's wife. So not only does she commit adultery, she leaves. Can she go marry somebody else? Well, she can go do that, but if she does that, listen to what it says, becomes another man's wife. And the latter husband shall hate her. So she leaves her husband, commits adultery, goes with somebody else, marries that guy, and they're having problems. And that guy can't stand her. There's an issue going on here. Listen to what it says. And if she left his house and went and became another man's wife, and the latter husband shall hate her, meaning the nation. So when Israel left both Jerusalem and the northern kingdom, one went to Assyria, to another man's house. The other one went to Babylon, to another man's house. And it winds up, as we're going to find out, we do the whole calendar thing. They brought Babylon back. They never left that husband. It was still going on. And the husband shall hate her and write her a certificate of divorce and put it in her hand and send her out of his house. Well, did they do that? Yeah, Assyria fell. Babylon fell. The houses were over. It was gone. Cyrus lets them come back. And send her out of his house, or when the latter husband dies, who took her to be his wife. Did Babylon die? Yes. Did Assyria die? Yeah. Are those governments still here today? Are those governments as they were in the day when Israel was taken as a bride and brought to her lovers? Is Nebuchadnezzar still there today? No. Yeah, there's people in that land, but no, it's not the Babylon of that day. That Babylon died when Persia took it over, and then Greece took it over, and then Rome took it over. Did Assyria die? Well, there's still people that live in the land, but it's not Assyria anymore. Assyria died. Her husbands died that she played the harlot with. And when the latter husband dies, who took her to be his wife, then her former husband, who sent her away, is not allowed to take her back to be his wife after she has been defiled. For that would be an abomination before Yah, according to the letter of the law. And do not bring sin on the land which Yah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. So while he's talking about marriage and how Israel should deal with marital relationships and the sanctity of the land, he's really talking about Israel, because the whole Bible's about the Messiah and his bride, that his bride does all these things. And we're supposed to read this and understand the context of, oh my goodness, then he can't bring them back. They've been defiled. And if they come back into the land, it defiles the land. I want you to think about this for a second. I know right now there's a country called Israel in the Middle East right now, and I know there's Jews from all over the Middle East, all over Europe that have come back, but they have not come back as the repentant bride. They haven't. They have not acknowledged this story yet, which means they're still in what? Adultery. They're still in adultery. Here's Romans chapter 6. Having read all of this, and I know you probably got questions as to your own, what's going on in our lives. Simple answer, guys. We messed up. All of us messed up. We've all done dumb things. We've all had dumb things done to us. We did dumb things. We made mistakes. We do that. We come to Messiah. We begin to fix those mistakes. From the time you come to Messiah, do it right. That's it. It's as simple as that. Do it right. Do it right. Be the wife you're supposed to be the husband you're supposed to be. Everything else, you're going to find out, has to deal with death. And I'll tell you why in a second. Here's Romans chapter 6. Based on what we just read, listen to what Saul says, is the core issue of everything. Romans chapter 6, verse 23. It's important. I started at 6, even though it's really chapter 7. Sometimes you have to read the verse before and the verse after to really get the context. Excuse me. All right. So, chapter 6 and verse 23. Can you guys hear me? Chapter 6 and verse 23. For the wages of sin is death, sin being the breaking of the marriage covenant. So let me pause here for a second. So yeah, Israel broke the marriage covenant, right? We know that. Judah broke it, Ephraim broke it. Did the Gentiles sin? Well, of course, we've murdered, we've lied, we've cheated, we've done all of those things. And while we may not know the marriage covenant, Father's law through the Son is for who? Everybody. Everybody. So while Israel went out even after they were engaged to Messiah and was with lovers, the Gentiles who were never engaged to Messiah still had what? Lots of other lovers. Baal, Malek, Dagon, Zeus, Dionysus, Apollo, Thor, and you just go on and on and on and on and on, all through history. We've all been married to all different, from Allah to Buddha to Confucius. We're still married to all sorts of different other gods. So we got a problem, Gentiles, but so does these people, that is Israel, Judah, Ephraim, and anybody that grafted in. They've got a problem too. We're all kind of in the same boat, believe it or not. So, one more time, the wages of sin is death, according to the letter or the curse, but the favorable gift of Elohim is everlasting life according to the spirit and the intent of the law in Messiah Yeshua, our master. How? He actually explains it. He finally gives us a how and a why. Here it is, chapter 7, verse 1. Or do you not know, brothers? For I speak to those knowing the Torah. This is the book to the Romans. This is a book to a synagogue of believers in Rome, of which there are Gentiles as part of the fellowship, but it's to people who are Jews. So he's telling them, you guys that know the Torah, you'll catch what I'm saying. Or do you not know, brothers, for I speak to those knowing the Torah, that the Torah rules over a man as long as he lives. For the married woman, I put in the PDP there, the adulterous woman, Israel, has been bound by the Torah, meaning the instruction of the marriage, to the living husband. Who's the living husband? The Son from Sinai. But, and what I'm about to tell you, or what Saul's about to tell us, is Torah. But if the husband dies, that is Messiah, she is released from the Torah, the marriage covenant concerning her husband. So then, while her husband lives, she is to be called an adulteress if she becomes another man's. But if her husband dies, she is free from that part of the Torah. Doesn't say she's free from all other instruction. She's free from that part of the Torah, which would declare her an adulteress and make her a recipient of death. She is free from that part of the Torah, death for adultery, so that she is not an adulteress, having become another man's. She was one man's, And now we're going to find out she can be another's in a second. So my brothers, you also were put to death. So think about this. Not only does Messiah, because he just told us, how is the marriage covenant broken? Death. Same today. You're married, right? You're both paying taxes together. You're doing whatever. You've got. How is your marriage disannul? How can your marriage covenant be ended? One of you dies. The other one's not under that covenant anymore. He can go and marry another. She can go and marry another. Death, the result of adultery or just sin, removes the responsibility of that prior covenant and the wages of it, if it's been fulfilled. So listen to what it says. What verse was I on? I lost my verse. Verse 4. So my brothers, you also were put to death. So not only was Messiah to be put to death, which would end his covenant relationship with his bride, because death is the only thing that does it. Who else has to be put to death? We do. The bride has to. Think about it. How many times does it say you are to die to sin? How many times? Why is baptism so vitally important? Because you must be born again of the water and of the Spirit. The water is your symbol of death. Just like he died, I die in the water. Just like he rose, I rose up anew. Why is that so important? Because it shows the wedding covenant or whoever I was married to before. I'm dead. It's gone. It's annulled. It's finished. Not even annulled. It's gone. And now we need to be born of the Spirit. That is, understand the intent of the law. And we're free to marry a new husband. Well, who's the new husband that we pick? The one who also died and rose again. Because even though he was judged as guilty for taking the bitter water and died for it, he wasn't guilty. And so the Father said, you can take your life back up because the letter of the law has been satisfied. You died for your bride. And now your bride will die in you, satisfying the letter of the law all the way across the book. Death has come. And now that death has come, both the husband and the former bride are now able to renew their vows. And now she's able to go back to that husband, because it's not the same husband. He's alive again. He's a new man. And so are you, or new woman. You get the idea. Does that make sense? That's how. That's why. That's the answer. That's what this whole book is about. It's about laws. It's about rules. He is a God of order. He gives us exactly what the instruction is so we know how the process happens, both for things that have happened and things that are coming in the future. That's why it's, so when people say, think about this, think about how wrong this is. We're not under the Torah. We don't have to keep the law. If it were not for the law, you would not be saved. You could not be saved. You could not come to Messiah without the law. The law and the spirit of it is the vehicle that brings you to him. So while we may not be under the curse of the law, he has not come away to do away with it. He's come to fulfill it. And he's come to tell us, anybody who tells you to get rid of it, don't do it, and don't understand it, and don't learn it, somebody starts preaching and teaching to you like that, it would be better for them. They are going to be the least in the kingdom. You don't want to be the least in the kingdom. I don't want to be the least in the kingdom. Is this making sense to everybody? This is important. So, where are we? I'm going to go back to verse 4. So, my brothers, you also were put to death, that is the bride and the husband, to the Torah, that is to the curse, the marriage covenant, the curse that comes in the marriage covenant, through the body of Messiah, the curse of the adulterous bride. For you to become another's. Who's the another that you marry? You remarry because of a renewed marriage covenant. Who? Here's the answer. The one who raised us from the dead. That's who you marry. We are a new man, or he is a new man, and we are one too. That we should bear fruit to Elohim, verse 5. For when we were in the flesh, the passions of sin, through the curse of the letter of the Torah, were working in our members to bear fruit to death. But now we have been released from the curse of the adulterous bride in the Torah, having died to what we were held by, adultery, satisfying the letter, so that we should serve the renewed marriage covenant in the newness of the spirit of the Torah, and not in the oldness of the letter of the Torah. What then shall we say? Is the Torah sin? Is it meant to bring us death, or was it always meant to bring us life? These laws are in Deuteronomy. He wrote this down before Messiah came. It was always there. Which means in the letter of the law was also what? The spirit of the law. The whole story that was coming. And what he would do. They're both there at the same time. This is the story. With all of that, I'll end with this, and I hope this makes more sense to everybody now. Pay attention to the yellow up there, the PDP, or what's in parentheses on your notes. Matthew chapter 22, starting at verse 2. The kingdom of heaven is like a man, a sovereign, Father Yah, who made a wedding feast for his son, the groom, the son Yah, and sent out his servants, Moses, to call those who were invited, Israel, strangers, and foreigners under Sinai, to the wedding feast. But they would not come. They committed adultery. Again, he sent out other servants, Simon, John, Shaul, saying, say to those who are invited, Judah, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle are slaughtered, and all is ready. Come to the wedding feast. But they disregarded it and went their way, this one to his field, that one to his trade, and the rest, having seized his servants, insulted and killed Messiah and the apostles. But when the sovereign heard, he was wroth, and he sent out his soldiers, Rome, and destroyed those murderers, and set their city, Jerusalem, on fire. And he said to his servants, the wedding feast indeed is ready, but those who are invited were not worthy. Therefore go into the street corners, starting in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the northern kingdom, and the uttermost parts of the world. And as many as you find, invite them to the wedding feast. And those servants went out into the street corners and gathered all whom they found, both wicked Gentiles who were married to other gods already, who believed and died and broke that wedding covenant they had with them and came up new and were allowed to become part of the bride of Messiah. Go to the wicked and to the good, those of Judah and Joseph who did believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and have them die to the covenant that made them and their families and their nation adulteresses, and be risen alive and be renewed in marriage. So both to the wicked and the good. And the wedding hall was filled with guests. Made up of who? The bride called Israel, the believing Jew or Judah, the believing of Joseph, the northern house, the believing of Ephraim, the fullness of the Gentiles grafted in, and they prepared themselves for the wedding. That's the story. That's what this story is all about. That's the core of this story. It's about a wedding. It's not about one exclusive people, but it does bear the name of the one who started this, Jacob, and all of his children. And I wanted to, we just don't have time to, but next week we're going to go into Revelation and we're going to see, well, who's actually there in the end? Who's mentioned in the end? 144,000 of the 12 tribes of Israel, and a multitude from every nation, tribe, and tongue, just like under Mount Sinai. That is Yah's word for you for this morning. Oh boy, I can't wait to see what people say about these shorts. That is a renewed bride. So this answers the question, how did Yah do this? Well, he wrote it into the law. I know it sounds weird, but it's not a loophole. It's the actual law. We can call it a loophole. Say, oh, well, he knew sort of the back doors. No, it's not the back door. It's what it actually says. But he knew when it needed to be applied. And so he can be the God of wrath and anger and jealousy, but he can also be the God of compassion and mercy and grace and love. And both of those things can be true at the same time. The downside of all of this is that if we do not avail ourselves of this amazing principle in the Torah, which provides salvation for us, then we will be judged by the letter of the law. All of us, everybody. And on that day, you can't say, yeah, well, I'm not Jewish. That's not going to work. You can't say, well, I was Buddhist. We didn't believe in it. Sorry, not going to work. You can't say, well, I prayed 5 times a day. I was part of the Ummah. Nope. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Do it now. Learn now. Abba, we love you. We thank you for your marvelous plan, for this incredible story that you have put that is so intricate, so detailed, and yet, Yah, you are opening up our eyes to it. We thank you for the Messiah. How great, how awesome, how much did our husband love us that he would be willing to come and suffer the humiliation, our humiliation, from our actions to restore us back to being his bride through the law. We thank you, Father. We thank you for this in the name of our husband who died and rose again. Amen. Amen. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I hope that you enjoyed that message. Listen to it over again. Check out the notes. And got questions, certainly shoot them over to me. I'll do my best to answer them. In the meantime, have an awesome rest of your Sabbath day. We'll see you on Monday morning for Morning Manna. Everybody say it with me. Shabbat Shalom.